Hi everybody, welcome back to Some Guys Movie Reviews. Today I'm going to be talking about Plane. The director of this film, who I'm not going to pronounce because I don't want to butcher it, he did the movie Bloodfather, which came out a few years ago, and I actually really like that movie. It stars Mel Gibson and Erin Moriarty, so I was actually glad to see him return, and this movie was getting positive reception. And I have to say, I really enjoyed it. The movie stars Gerard Butler as a pilot named Brody Torrance, and Mike Colter as a fugitive who's being transported on this plane. The plane gets struck by lightning and forces them to land on a remote southeastern Asian island. Turns out this island is run by separatists and militias, and there's no government, law enforcement structure. That's where this movie really takes off, and it's that simple. There isn't a very complex story to this movie. It is really what you get in the trailers. If you saw the trailers, you were interested, you're probably going to get exactly what you want, but if you didn't like what you're seeing in the trailers, you thought it was a bit generic, I don't think that when you see this movie, that's going to change anything. The other thing I want to mention, in order to enjoy this movie to some extent, you do have to buy into some of the more implausible scenarios that happen in this movie, especially early on, and then that kind of continues throughout. It's never egregious, but there are things that you kind of roll your eyes. You're like, oh, like really? I do want to highlight the action. I do think the action is really well done in this movie when there is action, specifically with Mike Colter's character. And there's a sledgehammer, and there's rescuing, there's a military unit and shooting. There were times where it felt brutal and visceral. You really got into it. Gerard Butler delivers a pretty good performance. I actually like Gerard Butler as an actor. I know he does a lot of these types of action movies, but recently he's actually been doing pretty good movies. I really liked Greenland, and to see this, I was actually really excited. Mike Colter delivers a pretty good performance, and their duo together. There's a sequence where they're paired together, and them acting off of each other worked really well. There were also subplots away from the island, like the airline, and there's this crisis group, and those parts are all fine. They're kind of run-of-the-mill, nothing special. But as I mentioned earlier, that's kind of where this movie faults quite a bit, is like the weak story and script. It's not very inventive or new. It's kind of doing something that you'd expect. Another thing I didn't love in this movie is it had a desaturated look. I don't know what was going on, but here they are on this island. There's tons of greenery and stuff, but it just felt very flat visually. Overall, for a January movie, I don't think you can go wrong with seeing this, especially if you're interested in the trailers, like I said. I'm going to give this movie a 7 out of 10. I think it's really good for what it's trying to do. It does have some faults here and there with the story and the way it looks, and it's not the most inventive or creative film, but for a January film, I think it does really well. What do y'all think? Are you going to see it? Leave your comments down below. Like, subscribe, share, and we'll definitely see you next time. Thanks, guys. Bye-bye.